A 7-year-old boy who is known for being naughty and curious suddenly does something that shakes the village. He destroys a statue of God, which is a sacred symbol for all people. His actions are considered brave, but also full of consequences. Watch till the end so you don't get lost. In a small village in India, life goes on peacefully with strong harmony among its residents. The village is surrounded by small hills and vast green expanses. Children often play in the middle of the village, enjoying their childhood happily. The village is led by a respected pandit named Rohan Tiwari. He is known as a spiritual leader who is respected for his wisdom, dedication to religion, and ability to solve various community problems wisely. Every morning, Hindus in the village gather at the temple to worship. They bring offerings and pray in front of the statues of their gods as a form of respect and devotion. However, in another corner of the village, there is a boy named Arjun Patel. He is a 7-year-old boy who is known to be naughty and unruly. The villagers often consider him a troublemaker because he likes to run around the temple, climb trees, and disrupt religious ceremonies. Despite this, Arjun was an intelligent and curious child. Unlike other children in his village, Arjun grew up skeptical of his family's religious teachings. Since childhood, Arjun often felt confused whenever people around him talked about gods and statues. To him, the concept felt foreign and illogical. He often asked adults, "Why does God have to have a form? Isn't God big enough to go beyond what we can imagine?" These questions were usually answered only with reprimands or ridicule, which only made his curiosity grow. His interest in Islam began when he heard the call to prayer from a small mosque at the edge of the village. The call to prayer stopped him from his journey, as if something was calling his soul. He often sneaked near the mosque to observe the Muslims praying. From a distance, he watched them prostrate themselves, pray, and read scriptures. At home, Arjun often heard Hindu prayers, but he never felt spiritually inspired like when he saw Muslims praying. He always wondered, was the real God really behind the statues, or was it in the simple, sincere prayers? This question was the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. Arjun Patel increasingly found himself sneaking near the small mosque at the edge of the village. He felt at peace whenever he heard the recitation of holy verses. His curiosity about Islam continued to grow, especially when he saw Muslims behaving with compassion towards others, including non-Muslim villagers. One day, Arjun decided to approach an old Muslim man named Abdul Karim, whom he often saw cleaning the mosque grounds. Arjun asked, "Sir, what do Muslims have to worship?" Abdul Karim smiled softly and replied, "Son, we believe that God is one. He does not need a form or intermediary. God is everywhere, and he hears our prayers without having to be symbolized by any object." The answer made Arjun's heart tremble, something he had never felt before. On the other hand, at home, Arjun's parents start getting worried as he often disappears from home. His strict father warned him not to get too close to Muslims, saying that they were different and not part of their culture. However, Arjun ignored the warnings. He felt that there was something right in the teachings of Islam, something he did not find in his daily life as a Hindu. One day, Arjun plucked up the courage to talk to his mother about his confusion. He asked, "Mum, if God is all-powerful, why should we worship idols? Isn't that like limiting God?" His mother was shocked to hear the question. She tried to explain that the statues were manifestations of gods that helped them feel closer to God. However, that explanation did not satisfy Arjun. Arjun's disbelief in his religious teachings begins to spread among his friends. Some of them started asking the same question, while others mocked Arjun and considered him strange. In fact, news of Arjun's skepticism reached Rohan Tiwari's ears. The pandit felt the need to intervene to bring Arjun back to the right path. Rohan calls Arjun and tries to explain the importance of ancestral traditions and beliefs. However, the meeting only strengthens Arjun's doubts. He feels that Rohan's answers are just mere justifications without any solid basis. Arjun's determination to the truth he seeks continues to grow, even though he knows that his views are starting to alienate many in the village. His search for the truth brings him closer to Islam until he finally decides to do something that will shock the entire village and shakes the deeply rooted beliefs there. Arjun's interest in Islam begins to cause unrest in his village. People who once considered him a naughty boy now begin to see him as a threat to their traditions. Arjun was increasingly seen near the mosque, talking to Abdul Karim or watching Muslims praying. This became a topic of conversation among the residents, and the news eventually reached Rohan Tiwari. Rohan feels that Arjun should not be left alone. He calls Arjun to the temple and scolds him for being a bad influence on the entire village. "You can't continue like this," Rohan said in a firm tone. Arjun's father, feeling ashamed, returned home in a fiery rage. That night, he scolded Arjun severely and forbade him from going near the mosque again. However, the ban only made Arjun even more curious. In his mind, he wondered, why should such a strong belief be protected by force and threats? Shouldn't the truth be able to speak for itself? One day, Arjun plucks up the courage to talk to Rohwari. He enters a small yet serene temple. "Who do you want to worship before God?" Arjun. The question made Rohwari pause for a moment. Then he answered, "These statues are manifestations of God so that we feel closer to Him. But we can understand God through the many things we can see, right? Doesn't God not need any form? Why should we create something to represent Him? Wouldn't that diminish His omnipotence?" The dialogue made the atmosphere tense. Some devotees in the temple began to look at Arjun with displeasure. Rohan, who felt cornered, finally threw Arjun out of the temple. Since then, Arjun's relationship with the villagers has worsened. Many people have started to look at him suspiciously. Even some of his playmates have started to distance themselves from him. On the other hand, Arjun is increasingly convinced that the truth he seeks is not in the temple, but in the sincerity and simplicity of the teachings he finds in Islam. The restlessness within him continues to peak until one day he decides to do something that no one in his village has ever thought of. His actions would be the beginning of a major change that would not only shake up society, but also change the course of their lives forever. One quiet night, when the whole village was asleep after the great celebration at the temple, Arjun sat in contemplation in front of his house. He looked at the star-studded night sky. His heart was filled with questions and a strange courage. He felt certain that something had to be done to show his village the truth he believed in. The next day, the village gathered at the temple for a religious ceremony led by Rohani Tiwari. Women brought offerings, children ran around the temple, and the atmosphere was filled with singing praises to the gods. In the midst of the crowd, Arjun sneaked into the temple, passing the pandits who were busy preparing the rituals. Inside the temple, there was a large statue that was considered the symbol of the supreme god by the villagers. The statue was decorated with flowers, silk cloth, and gold ornaments. Arjun stood before the statue with a pounding heart. He felt small in front of the towering statue, but within him grew an unshakable courage. With trembling hands, he reached for a wooden stick near the altar. Without hesitation, he slammed the stick onto the large statue in front of him. A cracking sound echoed throughout the room, causing some devotees outside the temple to run inside. They were shocked to see Arjun standing with the stick in his hand, while the statue began to crack in several places. "Arjun, what are you doing?" shouted one of the villagers. However, Arjun did not stop. With one final blow, the statue collapsed, destroying the altar beneath it. The atmosphere turned chaotic. People shouted angrily, while others just stood there in silence. Too shocked, "Don't know what you did. You destroyed our holy place." In a loud voice, Arjun answered, "God does not need symbols. God is formless, limitless, and cannot be represented by statues. We should not worship inanimate objects, but worship the one God." Arjun's words echoed throughout the room. The people who heard those words began to ponder. Had they been following tradition all this time without truly understanding the meaning of God? Meanwhile, Arjun felt confident. He had learned that God is one. He does not need offerings, does not need intermediaries. He hears our prayers directly, anytime, anywhere. The room was shaken not only by the destruction of their statues, but also by Arjun's confident words. In their hearts, seeds of doubt began to grow, leading to fundamental questions about what they had truly believed in all this time. Arjun's brave act was the starting point of a great change that was about to hit the village, a change that they had never expected. The incident at the temple spread like wildfire throughout the village. Almost everyone, from children to the elderly, talked about Arjun's courage in destroying their sacred statue. Most Mara Hindus considered Arjun's actions as the greatest insult to their ancestral traditions. They demanded that Arjun's family apologize and restore the temple's honor. However, a small number began to question their beliefs. Arjun's loud and confident words kept ringing in their ears. Some began to ponder, wondering if perhaps God did not need an intermediary like a statue. As the spiritual leader of the village, Rohan feels a great responsibility on his shoulders to restore peace. He gathers the devotees in the ruined temple and leads special prayers to appease the wrath of the gods. But deep down, Rohan begins to feel that Arjun's words have planted something within him. So he decided to find answers. Rohan went to the mosque, curious about the faith that would make a boy dare to do something so big. There he met Abdul Karim, an old man who often spoke to Arjun. Abdul Karim patiently explained Islam, especially the concept of Tawheed, that God is one, has no form, and hears prayers without intermediaries. Hearing this, Rohan decided to invite Abdul Karim to an open discussion. This proved that Hinduism was superior and correct. It attracted the attention of the entire village. In front of the congregation, Rohan tried to question his beliefs, but every argument he put forward was answered calmly and logically by Abdul Karim. This debate further shook the faith of the Hindus in the village. Some who were previously angry with Arjun began to think again. They saw the simplicity and clarity in Islamic teachings, something they had previously missed in their complicated rituals. In the midst of all this, Arjun becomes a symbol of courage and the search for truth. Although he is only a child, his courage inspires the villagers to start questioning what they have always considered to be absolute truth. However, the conflict was not over. Rohan Tiwari felt that her position as a spiritual leader was under threat, who began to plan steps to bring his people back on track. On the other hand, the number of people interested in Islam increased, making tensions in the village increasingly high. This incident became a critical point in village life. Will the truth revealed by a boy change the entire community? Or will tradition survive even though it is being doubted? All will be determined by the courage to listen to the voice of the heart and seek the real truth. The anxiety in the village was growing. The discussion between Rohan Tiwari and Abdul Karim had raised big questions in the minds of many villagers. Some of them began to visit the mosque secretly, wanting to hear more about Islam. When Rohan finds out about this, he feels even more cornered. The Pandit, who was once revered as a spiritual leader, is now losing his influence. However, Rohan is not giving up. He gathers the village leaders and decides to hold a grand ceremony at the ruined temple to atone for the sins Arjun has committed. He hopes that this ritual will restore people's faith in their religion. The entire village is invited to attend, including Arjun's family. On the appointed day, Rohan stands in front of the restored altar. In a loud voice, he speaks about the importance of preserving traditions and honoring ancestors. However, in the middle of his speech, an old man from the crowd stood up. The man was Batrinath, a farmer who was known to be wise but rarely spoke. "Isn't there maybe another way?" he said. Batrinath's words shocked everyone. The atmosphere became silent. Even Rohan was shocked and confused. It was broken by several others standing up, admitting that they too were beginning to doubt their faith. They saw their people beginning to waver. Rohan felt compelled to take action. He called Arjun to the front of the crowd, hoping to find answers among all the people. "Brother Arjun, do you think a kid like you knows more about God than the wise old people in this village?" But Arjun was undeterred. With a steady voice he replied, "I only know that God is one. He does not need idols or offerings. He created us all, and he is in the heart of everyone who seeks him sincerely." What the boy said came from his own conviction. At that moment, something in Rohan's heart began to crack. Arjun's simple words attacked his convictions that he had held so fiercely for so long. He remembered his childhood, when he also had the same doubts but chose to bury them out of respect for tradition. A few days after the ceremony, Rohan secretly approached Abdul Karim at the mosque. They spoke at length, not as opponents, but as two people seeking the truth. The conversation left Rohan even more confused. But it also gave him hope that perhaps the path he had been on was not the only path to God. Meanwhile, more and more villagers were openly showing interest in Islam. They began to study its teachings, discovering the simplicity and sincerity they had longed for. The once divided village begins to find a new peace, although the conflict between tradition and truth continues. In the end, this turning point is not just about religion, but about having the courage to question what has been accepted as truth and to seek the path that truly brings peace to the heart. Time passed, and the once tense village began to find a new balance. After a long conversation with Abdul Karim, Rohan Tiwari took time to reflect. He began reading the Islamic holy book, not to fight, but to understand. In his solitude, he found the peace he had been searching for. One quiet morning, Rohan Tiwari surprised the entire village. He came to the mosque and humbly pronounced the Shahada in front of Abdul Karim and several villagers. Rohan's decision was not only shocking, but also an important symbol for the community. Finally, he also accepted Islam after seeing the extraordinary changes that occurred in the village. The small mosque that was previously inhabited by only a handful of Muslims has now become the center of new activities in the village. However, interfaith relations are still well maintained. The remains of a destroyed Hindu temple are left as a reminder, not of conflict, but of the courage to change. Arjun still grew up as a simple child. He often helped Abdul Karim take care of the mosque and taught other children about Islam in his cheerful way. Arjun's name is not only remembered as the boy who destroyed the statue, but also as the little boy who brought hope, peace, and unity. It all started with the courage of one little person to ask, search, and believe, with Islam as the light that united them. The village now lives in harmony, moving forward as a better and wiser community. And Allah knows best, that's all. Peace be upon you, and Allah's mercy and blessings be upon you.